Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Early Career Researcher Award information session. My name is Isabelle Tremblay. I'm the Senior Program Manager at MIOPAR. This webinar today is to give you more information about the fund and also allowing time for questions. So today, as I said, I'll be presenting a little bit an overview of the award, the application process, the resource we have there for you, the evaluation criteria, and most of all, provide a little bit of time to ask your question. Oops, there you go. Before we jump into the core of the presentation, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge with respect the Mi'kmaq people on whose territory I live on and whose historical relationship with the land continue to this day. We acknowledge that the lands on which we gather today are the traditional territories of Indigenous people from coast to coast to coast. I recognize that we are attending from a variety location throughout the so-called Canada. So as we come together in this virtual space, we can acknowledge that each of us join from different places with unique histories and ongoing relationship with Indigenous communities. We honor the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have stewarded these land and waters for generations and continue to do so. We acknowledge the deep and enduring connection that Indigenous communities have to their territories and the importance of upholding their rights, culture, and voices. As we engage in today's discussion, we invite you to reflect on the land you are on, learn about its Indigenous caretakers, and consider how we can collectively contribute to meaningful reconciliation. Today, I have a few team members with me today for the presentation. So I'll be the one doing the main presentation, but we have Ryan Ford, MIOPAR project accountant, who is there, who can help out too with question with regards to the financial part of the application. We have Rosie and Odette. They are here in the background to provide technical support. Rosie is the communications coordinator at MIOPAR, and Odette is communication and design assistant. So they're in the background, they're there. If you have a technical problem, they will be there to help you out. A few housekeeping notes. You're welcome to keep your camera on or off, but we ask you to please keep your microphone muted during the presentation. When we'll get to the question period, I'll stop sharing my screen and then we can all see each other. And then we ask you to raise your hand if you want to ask a question live. But you can always ask your question in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring the question, and then at the question period, we'll answer those in order that they have been received. So I guess we'll jump into today's presentation. For those who are not familiar with MIOPAR, MIOPAR is a Canadian not-for-profit organization that supports research, training, and communication related to ocean through funding programs. MIOPAR support Canadian-based projects across multiple disciplines that mobilize knowledge, enrich research, and encourage collaboration between academics, practitioners, policymakers, Indigenous group, and community group. Just a few months ago, over the summer, MIOPAR produced an important document that I really encourage you to have a look at. It's MIOPAR's science strategy. And the science strategy does highlight the core priorities and the thematic of the research project that we are looking for and that we will be funding. So research projects really have to be aligned with those 4 core priorities. The 4 core priorities are the number 1 is ocean protection and coastal socio-ecological system stewardship. Core priority number 2 is climate change prediction, adaptation, readiness, and intervention. Core priority 3 is just and equitable opportunities in the blue economy. And finally, core priority number 4 is leadership in marine research, infrastructure access, and talent development. When you read the document, there are more detail about each of the core priorities and targeted areas that MIOPAR is supporting research. First thing I wanted to do is really provide a definition or what we mean by early career researcher. An early career researcher is a researcher within 10 years of receiving their highest academic diploma and within 5 years of the date of their first independent research-related appointment. I wanted to point out, because that's a question that has been asked multiple times, a postdoc doesn't count as a first independent research-related appointment because they postdoc are not carrying the research independently. They are still under the supervision. What we're looking for in terms of early career researcher, it's individuals that are in a university setting, but also outside of academia, in not-for-profit organization and communities. So any early career researcher that are out there in different organizations. In terms of diploma, I had the question a few times too, and I want to repeat, it's not just PhD, it's all diplomas. We recognize that there are different organizations with people with different and diverse backgrounds that do carry on research and that are considered early career researcher. So I wanted to point that out. When we calculate those time frames of 10 years and 5 years, we recognize that early career researchers are in a precarious or in a special time in their life and in their career where they tend, when they often have some leave, we think about parental leave, and we want to take that into account in their eligibility criteria. So there are more detail about the calculation, but there are eligible leave like parental leave that we there's a calculation, so those are taken into account, and then you're not penalized into those time frames. However, there are other leave that people are taking that are not considered eligible leave, and we do not do any credit on this. And those are professional leaves, time spent in non-academic research or non-research related duties, career activities. What's the goal of the Early Career Researcher Award? It's to provide individual research grants to support early career investigator in establishing independent research programs. The research project must align with the science strategy that I pointed out earlier. And also we're looking for projects that make and have a clear impact for communities, for the environment, for the science. On those proposals, there's only one principal investigator allowed. So it's led by one principal investigator who is allowed to present only one application. And it is the early career researcher who will lead the project. Funding is $75,000 per year for a project that goes from 2 to 2.5 years. So the maximum that one can have, if they have a 2.5 years project, the maximum that can be requested is $187,500. Key dates. The submission, the deadline to submit your application is Tuesday, January the 6th. We're going to give decision in late February, and we'll have to move fast with the agreement signing in March. And then agreement has to be signed really quickly. That's going to be a key component too in this program, so that the project can start and the fund can be send it to the researcher before March 31st, 2026. Project, on the other end, must end by October 31st, 2028. Funding eligibility. So there are a few things. I'm not eligible to hold 2 individual multi-year awards from MIOPAR on the same research topic. For example, right after this webinar, we have the Community-Led Research Fund, which is another multi-year program. So if one person was to apply to the two fund, they could not hold the two fund. They would have to choose one or the other. Not eligible to receive two different awards for the same research topic. For example, if you have the early career researcher and then you want to apply to the KM fund, you cannot have the same topic, same research topic and project on the two. We want to diversify. And also important, postdoc positions are not eligible for this funding. This is not for postdoc, this is for early career researchers that are independent researchers. Eligible recipient includes Canadian-based individual, institution, organization eligible to receive MIOPAR funding. MIOPAR is now able to fund individual not only in universities, but in a whole variety of organizations, and it's all listed in the program guide. But basically, it's pretty much everyone except the federal government, department agencies, or crown corporation of the government of Canada. So it's a big diversity of people we can fund. And also the principal investigator, so the early career researcher, must be eligible to hold a grant in their name per their institution and organization requirement. The applicant itself, so the early career researcher, must have a firm appointment with a Canadian research organization. The position that they are holding must allow them to do research that is not under the direction of another individual, and it must be allowed to supervise or co-supervise the training of highly qualified personnel. The position must be ratified, so it means it has to be official, it must be in effect, and the salary of funding for the appointment must be guaranteed. But there's a little difference here. Individuals that are in a university, the salary must be guaranteed by the university, and the award can only be used for the research purposes. Individuals that are not in a university, the award can be used to fund part or fully the salary. However, there must be a demonstration that funds are secured to support the research program that is proposed. When we talk about Canadian research organization, where the early career researcher will carry their research, we talk about organizations that have a clear mandate to do research in Canada. It demonstrates its support. The organization must demonstrate its support for the research project, as well as for the support for the applicant. And that is either in cash or in kind. An important thing too, before any funds can be dispersed, the applicant must have taken up their position. So the people have to take their position by March 31st, 2026, when the program will start. You probably have, most of you, if you registered to the webinar, you probably have seen on our website that we have a whole bunch of resources for you and to explain about the process and how to apply for the program. So on our website, on the webpage for the Early Career Researcher Award, we have the document with protocol for proposal where you will see the evaluation criteria grid. We have a detailed application guidelines. We provide you too with a worksheet document, which is a Word document that is basically the proposal form, similar, pretty much the same thing that what is on the online portal, but it does allow you to work on your application offline. Therefore, you can just copy paste all the information on the portal. We have a budget template, different budget template that are necessary for the program, which I will explain a bit later. We have a document of frequently asked questions. I will also build up on that document following today's webinar if there are more questions that haven't been answered. And we also have a whole lot of other resources. So again, link for the MIOPAR scientific strategy, a document that explains you clearly what's the difference between match and leverage funding, resources in terms of EDIA and truth and reconciliation, including also a webinar for a link for the webinar that was done a few months ago that explained how to integrate meaningfully EDIA and truth and reconciliation in your proposal. I know Rosie and Odette have been putting a lot of link in the chat box. I wanted to point out that the webinar, most of the document are both in French and English, except that the webinar is only in English, but I think there has been translation done in French for people who are Francophone. If you have questions, I'm the person to contact at MIOPAR to answer the question for this program. So the application process. So MIOPAR, we are using SurveyMonkey Apply platform for the application process. So it's a portal online. And then for the people that are successful with the grant, this same portal will be used for the annual report and the final report of the project. Application components are pretty basic. I'll just highlight a few things, but basically we ask about general information about the applicant, the project. We have a section where we ask more information about the experience, expertise, career path, research plan, no more than 5 pages. We have a section about, of course, project milestones, their deliverables, timelines, KPI, little data management plan, and then budget template. So there are 2 main budget template to use. The first one is the project budget, which is Appendix B. This is really the budget of the project, but this is the money you ask from MIOPAR for your project. And that means that the maximum you can ask, for example, if you have a project of 2.5 years, then the maximum you can ask is $187,500. And again, reminding that the people in a university setting, the money cannot go for the salary. It has to be going to all the other research expenses categories. While the people that are other organization, that they can ask part of the salary. We also, under the new funding, MIOPAR can now cover some of the overhead. Be careful here. Open your ears. So we can cover some of the overhead to a maximum of 15%, but this cannot be just a flat rate applied to the project. And then a clear justification and calculation needs to be provided to explain why the overhead, how it's calculated, and how it relates to the project, and how it does scale to the project. Understanding that this is quite complex, we recently produced Appendix B1, which is a table that help you to calculate and provide detailed calculation of the overhead cost. So that's an extra tool for you to help you in your application. We want to know about partners' contribution to your project. So other partners that are coming with either cash or in kind. And an important thing too, so this is in Appendix C, for the partners' contribution, for this early career researcher award, the proposal should show match funds that are equal to or above the ratio of 1 to 0.3 from from non-federal government partners. So match funding is important. You have to demonstrate that 30% of the project cost is secure, or you can secure up to 30% of minimum of your project cost. Justification will be important too. So in the budget, you'll be asked to provide a justification of each budget categories, including, again, the overhead. There's a section about early EDI and truth and reconciliation. And another important component of your application is the letter supports. there's one letter of support that is mandatory, and that letter of support must come from the organization where your Early Career Researcher Award project will take place. In this letter, the organization must confirm the Early Career Researcher mandate to carry out independent research with the organization, and the support in cash or in kind to the Early Career Researcher in its project for the duration of the project. An important thing too is that this letter, because this letter is mandatory, you cannot submit your application until that letter came in. To get your letter of support, when you'll be in the portal, in the section for the letter of support, you will be able to enter the name and the email of the person at the organization who will provide you the letter of support. So in the portal, you'll write the name of the person, the email, and automatically those people will get an invitation to log into the portal and add the letter of support. And once you get that letter of support in the portal and finish your application, you can submit. And make sure you send this request as soon as possible because you'll want this letter before the deadline, before January the 6th. Because if it's not completed by the deadline, you will not be able to submit your application. As I said, we are using the online portal. We created a user guide to help you navigate the portal, which is pretty user-friendly, but yet we still created a guide, and it can be found on the main page of the portal. And I think Rosie and Odette are putting the link for the portal in the chat box, but it can be easily accessible to directly from the Early Career Researcher Award page. Finally, proposal evaluation. So the criteria on which you will be evaluated are the 4 criteria, and they both have 25% weight in the overall evaluation. So 25% will be for excellence of the candidate. Then we'll look for project goals, quality, impact. We're gonna look to the project plan, the budget, support from the organization that is hosting the Early Career Researcher. And then there is a section about EDIA and truth and reconciliation consideration. Everything related to research is evaluated by MEOPAR Research Management Committee, which is an independent group of experts that review the research part of the proposal, while the EDIA is reviewed by a consultant expert in the field. Then results are merged. The full detail reel of evaluation is available in the call for proposal document, so you can clearly see how your project will be evaluated. This is the same grid that will be used by the reviewers. So we're getting to the end, but before we go to the questions, I just wanted to point out, because Christmas is coming, and I wanted to make sure everyone is aware, MEOPAR offices are closing between December 24th and we'll be back Monday, January the 5th. With the deadline being January the 6th, make sure you ask all your questions before you're going on a holiday.